again, Year 12. A couple of days ago, I asked via a Facebook poll whether students knew anything about the band descriptors and how band descriptors are utilised in your HSC examinations and how they can help you to study. And the overwhelming number of students responded and said, look, didn't even know what they were, hadn't heard of them, or that they had a copy and it was sitting just in their folder and maybe they glanced at it once, but didn't really know much else about it. So I thought I'd design a presentation just to help out with that and look at how they can be used to help you to design and navigate your study plan. And so to do that, what I'll do is I'll just quickly share my screen with you guys, and we'll get on with having a look at what it is and what it looks like. Okay, so as discussed, we're going to look at band descriptors and why they should or how they can be used to help shape your study, which is a really, really important thing. We want to, we don't have much time. We want to use our time as effectively as possible. Usually most of us have, set goals, but in terms of actually knowing what it looks like to reach those goals, that can be a little bit challenging, and you want to know in advance what it looks like. So your band descriptors are there to help you to know exactly what it looks like to achieve the goal that you have set for yourself. And so then it makes sense, if they're the thing that outline your goal level, that we use those as indicators and ways of mapping our progress and setting up our study plan. So let's talk about, firstly, when we're talking about the band descriptors, I just want to go over the HSC marking process, because NESA do publish this on their website, and they outline the whole process to everyone, but mostly we don't, probably spend an enormous amount of time looking at that, because as I've said, we're all time poor. It's really challenging to get in there and find all of that information buried in the depths of the website. So what I've done is I've developed it into a really clear, simple three-step overview. There is more detail on the NESA website, far more information if you're really interested in having a look at that. But as an overview, what happens is, and you would know, that you guys sit down based on a HSC examination timetable. You sit down for a specific exam, and everybody in the state sits that exam at the exact same time, on the exact same date, and pretty much under the exact same conditions. So it follows, and everybody's equal. That's the idea of that. Once that's been done and your papers are collected by your HSC examiners, they're sent off into a marking centre, and that marking centre is staffed with a large number of experienced HSC teachers who have applied to enter into the marking process, and they have been trained under a very rigorous training process where they make sure that they're marking to the criteria set. They make sure that, there's an accuracy with that marking, that everybody's marking, a 16 at a 16 or a 10 at a 10, that there is a consistency across that marking. And that is monitored across the whole process and looked at in sort of quantifiable data that is pretty much delivered real time now as the marking process has gone online. So any discrepancies, any issues are addressed straight away. So there is a very, very rigorous and very, very clear and well-designed process that sits behind that. So when your markers are marking, they are assigning you a mark. Let's just say if it's a response being marked out of 20, they're assigning you a mark in the A range of a mark between 17 and 20, in a B range between 13 and 16, in a C range, and we talk about A, B, C, and D. We don't talk about bands in the marking centre. Just like at school, they don't talk about bands. We're giving you a mark, and there's a bit of a difference between those two. So your exam markers give you that mark. That mark is entered into a system against your student number, and then all of those marks go into a whole process, and your marks are added up and you're given a mark out of 100. However, once that marking process is completed by the markers in marking centres, as they used to be called, now they're all online, but once that marking process is completed, there are a select group of markers who are asked and offered the opportunity to become what's known as judges. And those judges are assigned to determine the minimum mark needed to meet the achievement standard outlined by the performance band descriptors. And that's where they come in as really, really important, because the mark, the raw mark that achieves a band 6 is something that fluctuates every single year. It's not a fixed, you got 90 in the exam, therefore you equate to 90 in your a band 6 in your raw mark. So let me explain that with an example, because that can be very confusing. So let's take the example of Jane, who's sitting her HSC PD HPE exam. So Jane sits the exam. It goes to the marking centre, and in the marking centre, based on the marking criteria and the samples and the marking process, Jane is awarded what's called a raw exam mark of 82. Okay, it's had no moderation, it's had no interpolation, any of those processes. It is just the raw mark. That mark is sitting in a data spreadsheet collection point. The judges then sit down and look at students who have, students' achievements, and they determine what's called cutoffs. And they say, well, this is going to be the cutoff mark this year based on the band descriptors, the standards that we've set for a band 6. This is what's going to be the mark that students have indicated at this level, that anything at this point or above, that student is achieving at that band descriptor level, so they get a 90. So in the year that Jane, our hypothetical student, is sitting that exam, that particular cohort, the cutoff mark for a band 6 was 82, for example. Now, this is an example that NESA uses, again, on their website, so it is coming from a valid source. So for that cohort, that year, band 6 is determined to begin at an 82 based off those performance band descriptors and a review of the student responses of the state at that cutoff point, remembering that we know that that marking process is an stringent and extremely accurate process. So then, using a technique called interpolation, students whose raw mark or raw exam mark was on or above that cutoff mark, in this case 82, between the band 5 and 6, will receive an exam mark somewhere in the range between 90 and 100, because 90 to 100 is what they determine to be a band 6 as a regular thing that happens every single year. But that raw mark that is somewhat moderated up to be a 90 or interpolated up to be a 90, that varies. So Jane, with her raw mark of 82, she's just met the standard for a band 6, so she gets the 90. She comes into a 90. Another student maybe has got 83 or 84, and they may get 91 or 92, depending on, again, that interpolation process. So based off that then, if our band descriptors are one of the key facets in determining our end result, our goal band, then it makes sense that we really know those in detail. And unfortunately, it seems that lots of students don't. So let's have a look at, as we've just said, that the power of the band descriptor and with the role that they play. So what we've said, at the end of the exams, you're being judged against a standard. Your mark matters. You want to be competitive in your mark, but that standard is what's going to come into play as well. So it makes sense to be really, really aware of that. It's like if you were playing a game, a competitive sport, and you went onto that field and you had no idea of the rules and you had no idea of actually how to score a goal. You'd never seen anyone play it. You had no idea. It wouldn't matter how skilled you are. It wouldn't matter what potential you had. You were never going to be, successful in that in the first couple of games. And unfortunately for your HSC exam, it's one game. It's the grand final. So we want to know the rules, and we want to know what it looks like to play the game, and we want to know what it looks like to get that top band. And so what NESA do, that they're really playing quite fairly, that what they do is they produce those band descriptors for every single subject, and they are available for every single student via the website. So if you go to your course and you go to your syllabus and you follow that website, at one of the hyperlinks there will say performance band descriptors or course performance descriptors. And if you click on that, it'll take you to all of the band descriptors. And then what they also do, because using our analogy, it's reading the rules of a game and seeing a game played can be very, very different. What NESA also do is they produce what's called the standards reference material. And they say, here's what the cutoff looks like. Here's the cutoff that the judges also use as a guide point. And so they're saying, here's what the judges are going to use as a cutoff point, as a guide. The band descriptors align with this cutoff. This is the standards that we've set with this new syllabus or the syllabus that's currently in play. And so you can access those. They're there. They've got many, many work samples that are annotated as well by HSC markers, so you can read, what it is that makes them a band 5, 6 cut as opposed to a 4, 5 cut. And so they're really, really useful for you to be using and looking. But how do we use and how do we look at those, and what do those band descriptors even look like? So to help you with that, I've pulled 2 example band descriptors, and I've only pulled band 5 and 6 just for you to be aware of, but there are obviously all the way down from band 6 all the way down to band 1, where they go through and they describe, what a performance in that band looks like, what are the skills, what's the content knowledge, what's the level of expertise that we are expecting and looking for. So for PDHPE, the dot points align with each other. So they, the dot point 1 for PDHPE for band 6 is dot point 1 for band 5 for PDHPE band 5. So if we have a look at the language of those 2 band descriptors firstly, and going through each of those for your courses is the best plan. So let's say my goal for PDHPE is I want a band 6, and I want to know what it is that I need to do to get a band 6. So it says that I need to demonstrate, in the first dot point, demonstrate extensive knowledge and understanding of the range of concepts related to health and physical performance. Whereas in a band 5, I'm just clearly expressing ideas that demonstrate a thorough understanding. So it's not extensive, I've just got a thorough understanding of health and physical performance concepts. I've got no idea of the range of those concepts. I've just got some idea of some of them, but I haven't shown my marker that I know there's a range. I'm going to focus in on these 2 because they're most relevant, but I am aware that there's more than just, 1 or 2. The second dot point, when we look at band 6 for PDHPE, says I'm comprehensively applying theoretical principles to design and evaluate specific strategies for improving health, participation and performance. Whereas at a band 5 level, I'm just identifying those strategies. I'm not applying them. I'm not comprehensively doing so. I'm able to identify those strategies for improving health, participation and performance. And instead of designing and evaluating specific strategies, I can just discuss the links between individual health behaviour, social issues and community health status. So I'm really not I'm not showing that depth of understanding, or not showing enough breadth of understanding, and I'm not showing an understanding of very specific and relevant strategies to the question at hand. And so on and so forth. So the underlining, so you're aware, is what I have done as an example of what would be good practice for you to do with your band descriptors, and go through and find your goal band and underline that and know exactly what it is. Now, English I've also pulled up because English is a bit of an interesting one up there with maths. When we look at the band descriptors for English, what we need to be aware of is the band descriptors for English Advanced and the band descriptors for English Standard are exactly the same. They do not differ. The marking criteria do in the examination centres in terms of the wording, but the band descriptors which you are being compared and being weighed against and judged against, they are exactly the same. Now, the reason for that is English has 3 different levels at which students undertake it: studies, standard and advanced, and you are all judged and plotted along the same bell curve. And so it does go to some degree to explain the discrepancies in the data. So 2021 HSC exam students for advanced, 16.86 of the state achieved band 6, whereas for standard only 0.85% of the state managed to achieve band 6. Now that's because you are, as I've said, being plotted against the same band descriptors and along the same bell curve, which is where your common module paper comes into play in paper 1. So again, the same process applies. In English, the first dot point for band 6 aligns with the first dot point for band 5. And so we know for a band 6, I need to demonstrate extensive knowledge, insightful understanding, and sophisticated evaluation of the way ways meanings are shaped and so on and so forth in that dot point. Whereas for Band 5, I've got detailed knowledge. It's not extensive. I've got perceptive understanding, but it's not insightful. I'm not showing insight. And there's effective evaluation in Band 5, but it's not sophisticated evaluation. Now, that continues on, but the problem is, well, what does that look like? What does that even mean to have extensive knowledge as opposed to detailed knowledge? What's the difference? They're just words. And to help us to understand that, that's when we grab the standards referencing material and the work samples approved by NESA and published by NESA to say, hey, these are the standards. This is what extensive knowledge and insightful understanding looks like. That's the work samples that we're producing and selling as a book. What looks like detailed knowledge and perceptive understanding, well, that's when we might go to the standards referencing material and say, well, what's that Band 5, 6 cut look like compared to the high range response? What are they doing that's showing that it's extensive, insightful, and sophisticated instead of detailed, perceptive, and effective? And so I can use those standards referencing materials and those high range sample responses to help give me an understanding of what those words mean for every single subject, because they are produced for every single subject. So how do we use that? How do we apply that to our study planning and our study steps? So the first thing I would suggest that you do is you identify your current performance level, your current performance band. So if you're constantly getting C's, let's sort of equate that and have a look at your response and go, well, it kind of fits in that. My knowledge is sort of sound. It's not doing anything fabulous, but it's there. It's solid. But in terms of me showing any kind of, unique interpretation or understanding of that, maybe that's what I'm constantly getting told in my feedback from my teachers. So, on guess, I'd say I'm at a Band 4. And highlight the band descriptors in that band and know those keywords, know what your level is. So that way you can sort of say, okay, well, that's where I'm sitting. And it might be that you're in sort of across a couple of different bands depending on your responses. But consistency really matters with this as well. The next thing then, step 2, is to identify the key indicators of the goal band that you have for that subject in the HSC. So if I go to those band descriptors and I want a Band 5 and I'm at a Band 4, then I need to know what's that Band 5. Or I want a Band 6, my goal is a Band 6 for a particular subject, then I need to know exactly what that is. And I need to know my gap. Where's my gap? Because if I'm at Band 4 and I want to get to Band 6, kind of need to fill into Band 5 first, and then I need to track into Band 6 and get there, take those steps. The next thing that we do is we read and annotate those work samples by NESA in the band that you are aiming for. You want to get the band that you're aiming for and you want to annotate those. Often we just read them and go, oh yeah, great. But you want to go in and you want to find, what sort of phrasing are they using when they're talking about textual examples or bringing in data, or they're talking about a specific scientific research methodology or whatever it is. How are they wording that? How are they introducing that? What level of information are they showing? How are they showing insight? How are they showing, a perceptive understanding of those things? Then you want to use those as models, not plagiarism, but models. So you can model your own responses and your own way of writing on the depth, the structure, and the expression that they have shown, and model those in your own responses. The next thing you want to do in step 4 is using the work samples, annotations, and band descriptors. Identify specific skills and content to focus on. Write these down. Know exactly what it is. I need to focus on developing the depth of my exploration of a particular case study, or I need to understand the range of strategies for health markers or improving health markers. Maybe I only know 1 or 2 and I'm not talking about the range, and that's a content point that I might need to expand upon. Write these down. That's really important to write them down very clearly. And then you use that list of skills and content and choose one. Choose one to focus on in depth, and you practice that skill over and over, and you get feedback on it from your teachers, if you have a tutor, from your tutors, by looking at it against those work samples. And then you take that feedback and you fix it up, and you keep doing that until it's perfected, until it's just something that you can do without having to really focus on it. Now that's consistency, that's practice, and sometimes that's just boring, and that's the reality of it. And when it gets boring, it's probably because it's no longer a challenge, which means it's pretty much solidified. as a general indicator. Once you can tick that one off, you move on to the next one and you repeat that, and you keep repeating that process, but then you don't want to neglect that first skill. So it's called spaced retrieval, which is something that I also teach in my study coaching, but you want to engage with spaced retrieval of those strategies and skills so that way they don't fall apart. Part of education and psychology is obviously the synapses in our brains. The first time we do something, it kind of builds this little bridge between of knowledge, and the more repeated we do that, the more thick and strong that bridge becomes. So if you do something once, if you think about it like a spider web, the initial first time is like a spider web, but when we repeat that over and over and over again, it becomes a really strong connection that's harder to be broken. And the way that we do that is through the repeated use and then the strategy of interleaving. So I hope that helps. And if I've talked about a couple of things that you're really interested in, I just wanted to let you know that we do offer a 6-session study coaching packages for students, and we take you through how to use resources like band descriptors, syllabus documents, schemas, your feedback, your past responses, as well as things like strategies like interleaving, spaced retrieval, based on educational psychology, to help you to develop your own targeted, effective study plan. Now, all of our sessions are fully resourced, and we really aim to develop your ability to study independently after completing those. So after those 6 sessions that you can do at your own pace, you're fully equipped to go and repeat that process over and over and over again and really make your study work for you. So we are limiting our intake to 20 people, and we do that so we can provide individual support and guidance for those students who are working with us. And we're offering that for only $99. So if you're interested in that, if you want to get in touch, you can register your interest via email at helpmeatthestudycoach.com.au, and we'll be in touch about the details in regards to that study coaching. Hope that helped Year 12, and thank you very much for your time.